Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Alivea.live. My name is Steve Burns. I am your host for this call. I get that honor. And every month, first Monday of the month, I get to introduce our founder, CEO, visionary, and a whole bunch of other titles after that. Mr. Loving Grandfather, his favorite title, Mr. Sam Caster. And Sam, welcome as always.
Hey, thanks, Steve. Good to be here. I love the first Monday of the month because we get to share whatever's happening around us. Sometimes it's our company, sometimes it's our charity, sometimes it's just the marketplace, what's happening out there, what's going on with integrative health, with functional medicine, with the regulatory bodies around it. I mean, there's a lot happening. There's a lot of really good things happening. Tonight, I'm going to come to you as the founder of Mana Relief. I'm going to put those slides up. Yeah, so something interesting came our way about 6 months ago at Mana Relief, and that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. Kind of share with you what's happening. Let's see. Okay. So, go ahead, Steve, you can go to the next one. So you guys know that in 2014, when we launched, we started looking at social entrepreneurship, we met with Santiago Rodriguez, and we told him, look, we want to go get to 7 million children. At that time, we were looking at a lot of different opportunities. And it didn't matter which direction we went. We were committed to meeting the needs of children through Mana Relief. So Dr. Rodriguez said, look, I've got Biolo, that's his first generation technology, which by the way was superior to everything that existed in the marketplace. And he said, I have some grades of Biolo. I mean, there's not a lot of range there, but I'll dedicate my highest Biolo range to Mana Relief buy one, give one partners. So if you link with someone that wants to do it, we'll provide them our highest grade Biolo because I can isolate that. And then we talked, Steve and I talked to him and said, really for a company that we want to create a social business, we need a product that is significantly better than that. Because we have to go into the marketplace and compete. And we need a proprietary story. We already know the technology works because we'd had 25 years worth of experience with it at that point. Is there any way that you could do something better than Biolo? And he said, oh yeah, I can. I think, in fact, I'm working on it right now. It's a premium grade Ace Mannin that he said it'll be a minimum of 20, maybe 25% higher grade. And that's a significant jump, comparatively speaking to what he had done from his first generation, which was Manipole, which is what I had at my previous company. So anyway, he worked on that for a while, and then he got back to us and said, yeah, I've done it. It's all yours. So he licensed it exclusively to Mana Relief, and Mana Relief ultimately sub-licensed that technology to Alivea. Next. But we had a couple of ventures prior to really launching Alivea. Our first was in Korea. We were asked to make products for a company that distributed, science-based nutritional technologies to healthcare professionals in Korea. There's not quite the restriction on them that there is here, maybe with our doctors. And so again, they were very, very open to integrative approaches where they use standard of care, and they also used, again, science-based nutrition. So this company bought, believe it or not, that's Immune in a bottle for Korea, and sold quite a bit of it. In fact, they still do. And that, of course, was connected to Santiago's Aloe and through a buy one, give one. So every time they sell a product, they donate to Mana Relief. So that generated generated the first cash flow to Manna Relief. That was really good. Some of you know the rest of the story. I went over there to do a training to South Korea, and the gentleman, Mr. Huang, who ran the company, said, "I'd like you to meet my wife tonight at dinner." She founded and runs a big ministry here in South Korea. It's called Nations Changers. And I'd just like her to see what you guys are all about. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. So we went to dinner that night. And of course, you guys know the story, or most of you do. When I sat down to dinner, in a little while, she came over and sat next to me with an interpreter. And she said, when you walked through the door, God told me that you were my spiritual father and that I was supposed to support you in everything that you were doing. So tell me everything you're doing. And so we talked a lot about the Ace Manna. We talked about Manna Relief and what we were doing with kids. And we had just come in contact at that point with a company called Evolve Health, who allowed us to do a buy one, give one pilot program through their company. And just to get proof of concept. And that was going extremely well. And she said, do you own any of that company? And I said, no. And she said, well, you should. And she said, do you think it's for sale? And I said, I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think the owners are happy with the direction that it's going right now. But I said, I'll be glad to ask. So I did ask. The owner was not interested at the time. And so I called Mrs. Kim back and I said, you know, I had a coffee with the owner yesterday of Evolve, and, you know, they're just not in a place right now. Maybe 3 or 4 years down the road they will be. And, but right now they're not interested. She said, yes, they are. And I said, well, I just talked to him yesterday. And her response was, well, I just talked to God this morning and he said they're going to sell to you. So get ready. And I said, okay. You know, and so the end of the week came, and the owner of Evolve called me. He said, there is something that's come up. It's a real urgency. Could we meet? And he had created a senior debt note for Evolve and thought he could just roll it over into a long-term note. But the primary investor wanted his money and wanted it right then. He had personally guaranteed it and didn't have the cash to back it up. And he said, so I'm kind of in a jam. Do you think the person in Korea is serious about buying the company? And I said, yeah. Anyway, long story short, that's what happened. And so that allowed us to create Alavea. And Alavea is a public benefit corporation. And we had the buy one, give one model. We did an asset purchase of Evolve, moved it in to Alavea. And unfortunately, it was May of 2020, the same month they proclaimed a pandemic, the COVID pandemic. So it was a little rocky start there, but that's okay. I mean, we had a good base of consumers going, and it allowed us to really spend time on infrastructure. We took over the IT part of our business that had been being managed from our back office provider, which gave us the ability to really look at everything that we needed to do for the future. You know, it was a strict MLM binary in those days, and we really felt that, you know, customer acquisition was a big part of the future of this industry, and that comp plan didn't really lend itself necessarily to that. We saw companies just completely getting rid of their networking compensation models and going 100% affiliate, which I didn't agree with, because somebody has to find, enroll, and train even your micro influencers, if you will. And so it seemed like what was going to be required is a hybrid model, something that addressed the new wave that was coming into the industry of customer acquisition and retention focus, which, by the way, is a very good thing and healthy thing for our industry. Instead of just a group of recruiters, large group, you've got maybe a smaller group of recruiters would have a larger base of customers. And so, but in order to achieve that, you've got to be able to pay your customer acquisition people, and the people that were willing to go out and share the story. So anyway, so it gave us the chance to really look at all that and do that. But anyway, I just wanted to make a point that our first buy one, give one partner actually was in Korea. And I think Steve probably remembers we were approached by another company. It was a network marketing company that did some sort of financial investments and travel and all kinds of services. The iBoomerang Group, and they had a foundation. And the foundation called us and said, "We love your model. We've seen what you're doing. We don't have anything like that. Could we give to Manna Relief?" And we said, "Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to take donations from everybody." You know, I listen, a dream come true would be that our entire industry would lock in on one cause and literally change the world. You know, I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I do think that as we grow, as we create more exposure for who we are and what we're doing, I think we attract companies that are like-minded. And I mean, there's all kinds of players in every industry, and in ours, there's the good, bad, and the ugly. But there's a lot of very good people in our industry. And I think they all have a heart to go beyond themselves. I think everybody does. But as a company owner, you're saying, what is my destiny with my company? What's my calling? You know, and I think a lot of them struggle to try to find something that's worthwhile, you know, investing their hard-earned profits into. And sometimes it's just localized. Sometimes there's huge amounts of overhead that have to be covered before anything happens. In other words, there's all kinds of issues. But anyway, these people recognized their foundation. They looked and they found us. And they did. They donated for about 3 years. And, you know, their season kind of came and went. But anyway, this is not new that we get approached. It's not often, but sometimes by people within our own industry, seeing what we're doing and wanting to be a part of the success of what we've achieved. So recently, you can go to the next slide if you will, I was approached by a company called MPG. And in early 2026. And this is a company that's in the nutritional space. They have some of their own products. But I was connected with the ownership of that company through a mutual friend who's also on their staff. And they had talked about creating a product similar to the one that I had created years ago for my company that was called Manatech. It was a glyconutritional product. And this guy told them all about it and said, you know, this would be a great technology to invest in, and we should upgrade it by putting a higher grade Ace Mannan extract. And of course, he told them about Santiago's product that is his baseline product that is called Biolo. And they said, you know, if you could put Biolo in a similar glyconutrient blend, you would dramatically upgrade the efficacy of that first generation product. And I think that you should also honor the man that invented or created that technology, or his company did, by donating to his not-for-profit. And they asked what that was. It's Manna Relief. It nourishes kids. You know, I mean, everybody just loved the story. So I was introduced to them, met with them. I felt, I took Linda with me. You know, she's the one with discernment and in our family. And we just had a very, very good, lengthy conversation about who we were, what we were doing, what we had, what was available to them. And so anyway, they said, we love the project. In fact, the wife, her name is Kathy, came with us on a Manna Relief trip to Mexico, got a chance to see what we were doing firsthand, got very emotional about it, like most people do that go down there, and just said, you know, we've been struggling to try to figure out what could we do with our company that would make a difference in the world, and this is it. So we'd like to donate for every bag of Varicel we sell, which is the name of their product, to nourishing a child in need. And as the founder and chairman of the board of Manna Relief, I was ecstatic. I'm not ignorant of the fact that we're in the same business, right? Same business model, same industry, which is nutrition. And I thought, to be fair to them, they need to know everything. Like, who are we? What do we have? What will they have? What is different about it? Because it will come out, And I said, so we were gifted by Dr. Rodriguez the premium grade of Ace Mannan that he makes. We called it at Manna Relief Immunolo, but then we branded it when we brought it into Alivea AE, Alivea Ace Mannan Extract. And it's significantly higher grade than Biolo, but Biolo is a significantly higher grade than our original, Ace Mannan stabilized extract that was called Manipul. So you'll accomplish your goal, but, people in your organization, if you're supporting Manna Relief, will see me, and it will connect them to my companies and the things that I do. And I just want to be honest with you, that's going to come up. And they say, really, our goal is to make a better glyconutrient product. The second thing I shared with them is I actually have a glyconutrient product. It goes way beyond glyconutrients, and I'll explain that. But it's core, for those of you that are wondering, what is that product? We don't call it glyconutrient, but that's a base component in that product is exactly what a glyconutrient blend was. And so I said, so we do have that product, and I just want you to be aware of that. The only product that they're going to make with the Ace Mannan is Vericel, the glyconutrient. And I think we can coexist in the marketplace. And I felt pretty good about their intent and about their desire to help Manna Relief. And I felt like between our two companies, they have some of their own proprietary technology that they think will be very synergistic with their Vericel. And of course, we have ours. And so anyway, that deal got put together. I went to their launch meeting for Vericel about 10 days ago and made a presentation. I was asked to introduce the concept of social entrepreneurship, kind of how the buy one, give one got created, why it works, what is Ace Mannan, and what does Manna Relief do with it? What do we do with kids all over the world? Where do we do it? And what their contribution will look like. And anyway, so I did that. Now, I will tell you that, in this pre-launch stage, some of my former company's distributors are in Alivea. Some of them are in MPG. Some of them are in Amway. I don't know. They're all over the place. And so the ones that were in MPG, of course, Googled me, Googled what I was doing, looked at our Ace, and so there was little confusion on who had what. And so a couple of questions came up, and I'm going to address those tonight on this call. Number one question that's kind of been circulating is, because Sam is working on this project of Vericel, is this a merger? I've had that question asked me from both sides of the equation. And the answer is no. It is the deal where they're going to make a contribution to Manna Relief. That is the deal. So no merger. Number two, does MPG have access to Alivea's proprietary Ace Mannan product? I think I just answered that. The answer is no. That's only for Manna Relief and Alivea. Number three, did Sam help formulate their product? And I think that came out of the natural evolution of, I launched the very first glyconutrient product in the world, that's why we were able to get patents on it. And the answer to that is no. I mean, how do you formulate that product? You read the label of a glyconutrient product. So they didn't need me to do that. All they wanted to know is could they donate to Manna Relief. So no, I didn't formulate their product. Somebody said that their product had 5 times the amount of immune optimizing fractions as Manipul, the original. That's not true. That's really what our product has. And I think people read and they're kind of confused on who had what, and I'll explain that a little further. But just so you know, I think that was a mistake that somebody caught on to. And then finally, this is a dual question. When you launched Alivea, why did you do a standalone Ace Mannin product, which is immune? And why didn't Sam just simply put this new proprietary Ace Mannin in his original glyconutrient blend? Those are two very good questions. And that's really what I'm going to answer through this presentation. Now, I will tell you that some of this is a little redundant. You've seen some of this before, but it is the flow that answers the question. So 1985, Ace Mannin was discovered, you know that, by Carrington Laboratories, stabilized for the very first time. It had a high level of mannose. These were mannose, they were polymannins, which means it's long lengths of mannose sugar. Next. They spent a lot of money on defining the mechanisms of action. First, they knew that mannose was used in glycoprotein synthesis, a brand new science called glycobiology. Nobody knew anything about it, but mannose was the key sugar in glycoprotein synthesis. And so they knew that because they were scientists that came from Carrington Labs and had looked at what does mannose do in the body. Next, they knew there was something with gut health. That these were soluble fibers that seemed to ferment in the gut and help produce short-chain fatty acids. There wasn't a lot. In fact, the term prebiotic had not even been coined yet. So in 1990, or this was the late 1980s, nobody knew what a prebiotic was. They didn't know what fiber was. They knew people needed it, but anyway. But they knew that it was a soluble fiber, so it had to have a fermentation process, so that was a good thing. But what they were after was the macrophage activation. These were the medium chains. Again, they didn't know the molecular weights, but they knew that these Ace Mannin molecules could bind to surface receptor sites on macrophages, activate them, and optimize your immune system's response to everything you were dealing with. So when I first met the guys at Carrington Labs, they said, this is probably the most important discovery in pharmacology today. I mean, you're talking about the drug industry. And I think it was Dr. Reg McDaniel says it's the most fascinating thing I've seen since the discovery of penicillin. I mean, it's got that kind of potential. Next. Of course, we've learned since then what macrophage activation does. I like this slide because it kind of tells the story of macrophages without getting into necessarily Ace Mannin, but cancer does not shrink without the help of macrophages, and macrophages need to be activated in order to eat cancer cells. So in other words, this is the immune system's response to everything, including cancer. Researchers discovered that macrophage activation not only rapidly induced tumor shrinkage, but unexpectedly, they found that activated macrophages were able to detect and eat cancer cells even in the presence of high levels of CD24/47 proteins, which are blocking proteins that cancer cells make to inhibit their detection. So they were noticing that cancer cells were there and that macrophages were wandering around and nothing was happening. So they activated the macrophages, and guess what happened? Tumor shrunk and the detection was made. So there's a lot of just miles of scientific literature on this today. So anyway, that's why they were so excited. Next. Of course, the first patent basically validated that Ace Mannin has been shown to be effective in treating conditions where the principal mechanism of resolution or cure requires intervention from the patient's immune system. And as those scientists asked me, do you know which ones those are? They're all of them. There is no poor health condition that doesn't require immune system intervention for its resolution. And so that's what's so fascinating about this molecule. It has the potential of impacting every poor health condition, one modality. And they were just unbelievably fascinated, and they couldn't believe that they were issued such a broad patent from the U.S. Patent Office. But that's what they showed it was capable of doing. Next. You guys know this. Unfortunately, the FDA caught on to what was going on. Their client was not thrilled with the fact that there was a nutritional product that could obsolete maybe half the drug industry by getting to the root cause of the problem instead of just medicating or managing the problem. And whether it was political or not, the FDA rejected acemannan as a therapeutic on the basis that it could not establish an LD50, the lethal dose that killed half the mice. All drugs are lethal, are toxic, so that means they can be lethal, and you have to determine what will kill a mouse so you'll know what will kill a human. Second thing is it didn't have a proven drug effect. In other words, all drugs have to alter the physiology of a disease process or a biomarker of a disease in 95% of the subjects that you give the drug to. Well, acemannan doesn't alter anything. Therefore, it doesn't have a drug effect. And so the FDA said, you didn't discover a drug, you discovered a nutrient, and leave us alone. Well, they invested by this time $100 million in research, and they were desperate to generate cash flow. They had a good business going with their veterinary medicine. Acemannan had been approved for the treatment of cancer in animals in an injectable form. They had a wound care division going. But the big brass ring was human beings. That's where they had to be. And so, next slide, they decided that they needed to get their stabilized acemannan, which was branded, this is their trademark, Carrington Labs Manipul. Dr. Santiago Rodriguez ran their plant in Costa Rica. He was the president of that wholly owned subsidiary of Carrington Labs. He made the first stabilized patented acemannan dietary supplement called Manipul. Next. That's when I was introduced to them, to Carrington Labs. I was presented with the project of maybe consulting with them to help bring that product to market as a dietary supplement. How would you get the word out? How would you educate consumers? And I just thought it was such an incredible technology that I petitioned them to let me license it exclusively and start a company and sell it. And it took a while, but they finally did. I started a company called Manitech Inc. in 1994, licensed the exclusive right to Manipul, and we just had a fabulous first 2 years. Our sales were growing, and the miracle of miracles was what was happening when we would meet at events and hear the testimonies that people were having with this first generation acemannan. And our doctors, who came from Carrington Labs, they'd been involved in the research, but they really had not seen the width and breadth of the impact of stabilized acemannan on a population base. And so for the first time, they were seeing it. And people were lining up, sharing their stories of what this Manipul did. And it was just incredibly successful and rewarding. Next. In 1996, Dr. Bill McAnally, who discovered acemannan, and Dr. Reggie McDaniel, who did all the clinical work on it, were both working for me at Manitech at that point. They came to me and they said, we want to show you something. And they opened up a medical school textbook to a chapter on glycobiology. And glycobiology is the study of the biological function of 8 specific sugars, which you see there on the right side of your page, essential saccharides that are necessary for cell-to-cell communication. So proteins get made in the cell, then they get coded. Each cell has it's an estimated 10 trillion proteins. Every one of them have to be coded. They have to be coded because that gives them the specificity of why they were developed in the first place. And so these 8 sugars are like letters of the alphabet, only they're 3-dimensional. And they go off in different directions, and every twist and turn in sugar and creates a different message. And as it shows kind of in this slide, on your right, this is how all biological data is transferred in the body from one cell to the next. If the cell needs nourishment, if it needs to be repaired, if it needs water, if it needs food, if it needs to be defended, if it needs to be repaired, whatever, it communicates that through what are called glyco, which is the Greek word for sugar, proteins. And they stick off the surface. So your cell makes these glycoproteins. If you see an image of a cell, it looks like a forest. I mean, these aren't just a handful. Every cell is covered with these glycoproteins. Okay, so they said the patent on Manipul is about half done. This is an exciting new science. I mean, this is the future, glycobiology. And we'd like to be a part of it. And as you see in these 8 sugars, one of the sugars is mannose. It's the key sugar in glycoprotein synthesis. They said, here's the proposition. Why don't we go find plant sources that have polysaccharides containing these 8 sugars, or as many as we can find. And then let's make a complex and add the Manipul to it for the source of mannose, and then file our own composition of matter patents, because no one had ever seen this before. In fact, we didn't want to call them biological sugars because that sounded like an oxymoron. And so we had to think of a name. And I went home one night, and the Greek word for sugar was glyco, and these were nutritional. And I came back the next morning, I said, I've got the word glyconutrient. And that stuck. And so that's where the word glyconutrient came from. And that's what we called these to distinguish them from the other 200 sugars that exist in nature. And we did create the first glyconutrient product. Next. This is the slide that you've seen before. This is very complex. This is looking inside of a cell. Over on the left side, you see DNA. DNA has strands of genes. A gene expresses the need for the production of a protein. That gets transferred to RNA. RNA goes up to that little thing that looks like a mouse right above it. That's called a ribosome. You got thousands of those in your cells. And the RNA says, here's the coding for how the proteins need to be stacked to make this particular protein according to this gene. So then transport RNA goes into the cell, goes outside the cell, finds those proteins, puts them together in the ribosome, and then they go into that long-looking thing that's called the endoplasmic reticulum. In the endoplasmic reticulum is where mannose is added. 9 molecules of mannose. That's what that organelle in the cell is designed to do. That's the foundation of all glycoprotein synthesis. So when I said mannose is the key sugar in glycoprotein synthesis, that's why it's the foundation. Then it goes all the way to the right to the endoplasmic, from the endoplasmic reticulum into the Golgi, and the Golgi adds the other sugars. And again, this is all orchestrated by the gene itself that is saying, make this particular protein to do this particular function. And then you see on the bottom how it extrudes them through the cell wall, these glycoproteins, and communicates. Now, part of the desire, go ahead and go to the next slide, Steve. Part of the desire to do this and to pioneer the new field of nutritional glycobiology is only 2 of these sugars are in our diets anymore. The rest are pretty much obsolete, mainly because we process food. We don't eat whole foods as a rule. And so there tends to be a deficiency. And what if you don't have all the letters of the alphabet that create cellular words? Then there's confusion. It's like the cell wants to buy a vowel, but the vowel isn't available. Now, as a backup mechanism, your cells, or starts in the liver, can actually convert glucose into these other sugars, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. And we know the preference is through diet because on the walls of your intestines are mannose pump sites. In other words, it's looking for mannose in your diet, pumps it right into the bloodstream, goes to the liver, and that's where glycoprotein synthesis starts, makes these chains of mannose, sends it back out into the bloodstream. Every cell in your body brings them in and starts that glycoprotein synthesis. So they said, we believe that not only will we get an enhanced immune response from the ACE mannan, we think we'll also have a new form of benefit that no one's ever looked at before by adding glyconutrients to the diets. By the way, it was so new that we did file and receive over 100 patents on this blend of glyconutrients by just adding mannapole to polysaccharides from plants that had those sugars, or most of them. Next. Everything went well at that company until 2005. This is really the only glitch in the story. I'm telling it because I'm coming back to it. In 2005, Dr. Bill McAnally, who discovered ACE mannan, said, I think I've come up with another way of processing and stabilizing ACE mannan that's not the system that is being used by Carrington Labs. And if it's true, then we can create our own extract, which we like that idea. Secondly, it was maybe 60% of the cost of mannapole. We were paying a premium for mannapole because it was owned by a pharmaceutical company who wanted to recapture their $100 million worth of research, something that no other nutrient is exposed to in the marketplace. So very expensive product. So Bill made this product. He called it an advanced form of ACE mannan. We did a pilot project. We brought it into our lab where we could measure the amount of ACE mannan in a composition, and it was almost identical. So mannapole had 12.7% total ACE mannan. This advanced had 12.1, so it really wasn't too different. And we could just put a little more in there if we wanted to, but per gram, that's the weight. So we thought we had struck gold. And so we put this new advanced in our glyconutrient blend, launched it, and the thinking was we will phase out of our original glyconutrient product in the next 90 to 120 days and just replace it with this more advanced form. We did add one more glyconutrient to our blend, so we really thought that was a better product. But something really interesting happened. People started saying my symptoms are coming back. Now here's what's interesting. It was the same glyconutrient blend, had the same amount of glyconutrient, actually had an additional glyconutrient. So what was different? Why would people's symptoms be coming back? Well, the only difference was the source of the ACE mannan. And Bill McAnally could not figure that out because this one's as good as this one. They're both stabilized, ought to work exactly the same, if not better. And it was just a mystery. The bottom line to that mystery is we couldn't solve it. And so we had to keep our original, what we call classic glyconutrient product in the market from then on. Couldn't take it out because it was still our number one selling product. Now, again, I tell you that to come back to it in just a couple of minutes. Next. Of course, 1997, you know the Romania story. I went there and found the orphanage that was in desperate need of immune optimization. We provided it. First time in a decade, no children died. That was the start of Manna Relief. Next. We made products out of ACE mannan. One was a product that we could just put in the food of orphans so they didn't have to change their diet. But in areas where they weren't necessarily feeding kids, they were providing something they would take home. And we wanted a more nutritionally sound product because most of these immune deficiency issues these kids have, one of the key influencers of that is malnutrition. So then I was introduced to Octavio Hernandez, who was the provider of powdered milk to the government of Mexico, and he made Mighty Milk. And you guys have seen that at our events, and you've been to Mexico, you've seen it, distributing it to the children. Next. Of course, in 2012, I was introduced to social entrepreneurship at the first international symposium, invited by President Fox. Came home, wanted my company to convert to a social business. Let's do a buy one, give one, all of that. Ultimately, the board of directors that I'd taken my company public decided it was too big of a risk to take that much money and give it away. And so next in 2014, I resigned. Steve and I were good friends at that point. He had had a company that was supporting my for-profit company. And I turned that over to his son, and we teamed up and met with Dr. Rodriguez and said, we're ready to change the world. And as I said in the very second slide I showed tonight, he agreed to give us access to his new invention, which was called BioLo, for our buy one, give one partners, whoever those were, and that he would go to work on a premium extract, which he did, and finally created, which is now Alivea AE. Next. He told us the story of the science that came out that showed the polysaccharide molecular weight of ace-mannan that actually caused the immune response. And so it enabled him to create a whole new process and a whole new way of providing the most efficacious ace-mannan technology. Next. So this is interesting. So the first two boxes there are Manipol and Advanced. He said, the first thing I did is I went back and I measured Manipol because he made Manipol. How much of Manipol falls into that range of immune optimizing fractions? 4% of the 12.7, so about 30% fell into that category. And luckily, we put enough in our glyconutrient product that it was efficacious enough to make a difference. Luckily for Carrington, the same thing. But there's Advanced. And look, even though Advanced had the same amount of stabilized ace-mannan, look at the fractions of immune optimizing sizes. 1%. So 4 times less than Manipol. So you would have had to take in 4 times the amount of the same glyconutrient blend to get the same immune response, which of course no one was doing. That's why all of a sudden, for whatever reason, it fell below the efficacious level, and people were saying, my symptoms are coming back. Now look at BioLo. Had 50% more total ace-mannan from Manipol, but 3.5 times more immune optimizing fractions in BioLo than in Manipol. This was a huge advancement. And we knew the difference that it would make in the lives of children and the difference that it would make in the lives of consumers that we would provide it to. Next. So then Santiago calls us one day, Steve and I, said, I want you to see what I've done. So he creates Alivea AE, 22% total ace-mannan. Again, that's another huge jump. In fact, proportionately, the same jump from Manipol to BioLo was equal to the jump from BioLo to Alivea AE. And the amount of immune optimizing fractions went up, 20% also. Now, what's interesting about this is the baseline. We're now getting extracts that are 22%, 23% total ace-mannan, 20% immune optimizing fractions. So there's no top end to Alivea AE, which again belongs exclusively to Manna Relief. Next slide. Okay, so when we launched this immune product in the company that was allowing us to pilot Evolve Health, we did an initial size of 56 capsules, that's 400 milligrams. What we had learned is that 100 to 400 milligrams was the maintenance level for most people. Some people needed more, some needed less to get, a maintenance level. From a therapeutic standpoint, it's like if something is wrong and your immune system is already, compromised, you probably need to support at a higher level. And we found that out in 20-something years at my previous company, and we were seeing the same thing. So when we converted to Alivea, we introduced a larger size, basically for that sole purpose, to allow people, number one, to get a better value on their ace-mannan, maybe for their family, but a better value on therapeutic levels. And so people, and now, of course, we work with Dr. Renee Hertz, immunotherapist. She's now launching a trial with her immunotherapy that the trial is recommending 4 grams a day. And these are for seriously ill people of our Ace Manning product. That's 20 capsules a day. In fact, we're working with her on a different delivery system for that, which we probably will talk about in the near future. But anyway, so we noticed that there was a strong dose response prior to leaving my former company. The problem with it just exclusively being in a glyconutrient is to get more Ace Manning, you had to take more glyconutrient. And so if you wanted a lot more Ace Manning, you had to take, 10 times the amount of glyconutrient because it was about 10% of the formula. And so that caused bloating and gas and this and that. And so people couldn't take as much as they wanted just because it was not possible to consume that much. So we felt really strong that immune Ace Manning is where the action was. Let's do that. Plus we wanted to take our time and look at glyconutrients even further. So that's why, to answer the question, why did you launch with just an Ace Manning product? Because, hey, that was the driver of the product. That's what created the immune response, and people were asking for therapeutic doses. Next. Okay, then in 2000, maybe 22, 23, Steve and I go out to the natural product show every year. And of course, every year it's the hottest thing. This year it's protein. Protein everything. Protein everything. You can't imagine. And that's because the food pyramid got turned upside down and recommended high doses of protein for optimal health. Well, back in those days, the phenomena was gut health, and it was coming on strong, and everything was about gut health. And we said, we have some of the best gut health technologies. Let's put something together that nobody in the industry has ever seen. Now we knew the term prebiotic. It was front and center. Back in 1994, the word wasn't even invented. So what's a prebiotic? It's the soluble fiber that gets fermented in the gut. It not only feeds friendly bacteria to reduce the risk of dysbiosis in the gut, it also produces short-chain fatty acids, which 25 years later we know may be the most important component in your gut, short-chain fatty acids. And without the fermentation of fiber, you just can't get it. That's the only thing that produces it. So our glyconutrients were all fiber. They were all soluble fiber. But a lot of advancement had happened in the fiber industry, a lot of advancement in what we would call a glyconutrient fiber industry. So we got a chance to look at a lot of things. We also looked at bioactive colostrum and collagen because there was so much great information on gut health with those technologies. Some people sell colostrum by itself as the ultimate gut health technology. And then, of course, our core blend. Core blend was made up of our betalains, our New Zealand pine bark for oxidative stress, and all of our core ingredients that we know contribute to better quality of life and particularly better gut health. Next. So let me just show you some of the stuff that we looked at. Xylose is one of the sugars, one of the 8 sugars. Xylo-oligosaccharides weren't around in 1994. But as we were researching different sources of these sugars, we were introduced to xylo-oligosaccharides. Now, that's a polysaccharide that is made up predominantly of xylose. Now, what's important about it is its prebiotic capacity. So you see in the blue XOS, that's xylo-oligosaccharide, all the way to the right, 1.4 grams is equal to 8 grams of fructooligosaccharides, 10 grams of galactooligosaccharides, 5 grams of inulin. Now, those 3 are the most popular and most commonly seen soluble fibers in food products and dietary supplements. So you got something that's, 3 to 7 times more impactful than every fiber on the market. And it contains xylose. Got to put that in the new blend, right? We did. Next. Beta-glucans. Beta-glucans have been around, but there wasn't enough science on it in those days. And but what's happened since then is we've determined that that's the primary active ingredient in medicinal mushrooms. That was a big thing there for a while. In fact, it still is. A lot of companies are looking at that. Beta-glucans. In 1997, the FDA approved reducing the risk of heart disease claim for beta-glucans. They were shown to lower bad cholesterol, and they've also shown to regulate blood sugar, and it is a prebiotic fiber. So with all that data, we had to add beta-glucans to the mix. Next. This is one I want to spend just a minute on, sialic acid. That's N-acetyl-neurominic acid. When you look at those 8 sugars, it's also called sialic acid. Sialic acid mannose and sialic acid have 2 very distinct functions on glycoproteins. Mannose, when it's on the end of a glycoprotein structure, tells the immune system something has gone horribly wrong. And so the immune system needs to dock to that message and say, are you me and are you okay? Are you somebody else? Are you broken? Are you diseased? Do you need to be killed? All of that is dictated through those glycoprotein structures. But mannose is the key to the attraction of the immune system. That's why ace-mannan can activate macrophages, because it's made of mannose in particular ways. When sialic acid is deficient, sialic acid is on the end of a glycoprotein structure because the immune cells are particularly the macrophage is going from cell to cell saying, are you me and are you okay? Are you me and are you damaged? Are you somebody else? How does it know it's you and it's okay? Sialic acid will be on the end of the glycoprotein structure. Well, what they found is that the most common biomarker in autoimmunity is deficient sialic acid. They don't know why it's missing. It's just not there. And so it's not that the immune system has gone wrong. It's just confused. It's looking at a cell and cannot determine if it's self, because the self molecule is missing for some reason. Now, we couldn't put sialic acid in our first glyconutrient blend because there was no source for it that we could find. Didn't come from a plant, only animals had it. And so we left that out of our original blend, as important as it was. Next. But what we found is that the highest levels of sialic acid exist in colostrum. Now, colostrum has its own whole bank of research that has shown what it does for gut health. So the immune factors, the growth factors in colostrum, the wide range of nutrients, are effective in dealing with inflammatory bowel disease, colitis, drug-induced lesions, gut barrier malfunctions, infectious diarrhea, gastrointestinal infections. In fact, the article this came from said bovine colostrum, a source of bioactive compounds for prevention and treatment of gastrointestinal orders. Now, you got to put colostrum in this product if you want a true optimal gut health product. And the side benefit, it's got high levels of sialic acid. Isn't that cool? Next. And while we're looking at bioactive ingredients, collagen popped up. Collagen is known as the seal and heal molecule for damaged gut. It's been shown to repair intestinal lining, reduces gut inflammation, balances microbiome because it functions like a prebiotic, improves digestion, combats leaky gut. So you got to have bioactive collagen. It's the framework of tight junctions that surround the cells that line the walls of the gut. And so you got to put collagen in the optimal gut health technology. Next. And of course, our core blend, beetroot betalains, anti-inflammatory, New Zealand pine bark, highest performing antioxidant we can find, modified citrus pectin. It's incredible for detoxification of heavy metals, which is one of, toxins and heavy metals are faster at destroying gut health than just about anything. other than inflammation. Modified citrus pectin, yeah, is the heavy metal detoxer. Lactoferrin strengthens intestinal barrier and inhibits pathogens. Another thing that is more and more in modern life are different types of bacteria and fungus and viruses. So lactoferrin is important. And of course, it contains our Alivea AE for optimized immune system. Next. Now you know why we created a glyconutrient product that wasn't just fiber. Because again, the market is demanding better gut health. And you can answer the demand with a story, or you can answer it with science. And of course, our strategy is always take the best science, apply it to the product, and let the market decide, which is what we've done. So in our targeted health stack, it is one of the core components, no pun intended. You've got optimized for cellular health, you have core for gut health, and of course that allows you to pick whatever product that you want to pick for your targeted health stack. So hopefully, guys, I have answered all the questions tonight. I'm excited about the fact that we've got a new donor for Mana Relief. But I want you guys to know that we will always maintain our proprietary nature in the marketplace. We will always have the best science-based technologies, and you will always have access to those to build your businesses that I believe will be generational in nature. Okay, thanks for allowing me to share. That was pretty quick, just almost an hour, 40 minutes, 50. Thanks, Steve, for hosting this tonight, putting the slides together. You're a champion. Thanks, everyone. Blessings to you. Talk to you next Monday.